When someone says there's no way that this little lens has the full frame equivalent of 24 to 450, I say, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, Sigma has come out with their longest ever zoom range. This is the full frame equivalent of 24 to 450. So it is an APS-C lens, and it goes from 16 millimeters to 300 millimeters. It looks so small and compact relative to that amount of focal length here on my A6700. And when you zoom it out, it literally doubles in length, and you're definitely going to want to keep a steady hand when you are way out there. However, the lens is going to help you out because it has optical stabilization. In terms of build quality, it really reminds me of one of my favorite lenses ever, the Sigma 18-50 f 2.8. I think this is overall the best lens you can buy for an APS-C camera. Any brand, any name. This Sigma 18-50 2.8, it just zooms a little bit, so small and light. It has great close focusing distance. You can basically do macro photography with it, and it is a reasonable price. I absolutely love this lens, and this lens reminds me a lot of it with a much bigger focal range, and of course it does have a variable aperture. Oh, and I should say disclosures, this is my own lens. I bought that with my wife's own money, the 18-50, but Sigma did loan me this 16 to 300, and I do have to send it back tomorrow, which is too bad because I've had a lot of fun with it. Now, we will get into the specifics of this lens, the sharpness, the bokeh quality, the autofocus, the focus breathing, things like that. But I want to preface that by saying this lens is something that we have to look at a little bit differently than some of the other lenses I review on the channel, like even the 18-50 2.8 or a prime lens, where you're just really focusing on the stat sheet. This one is not so much about the stat sheet. This one is about versatility. This one is about taking one lens, one and done. You can take this anywhere, whether you want to take a picture of the tip of the Eiffel Tower or you want to take a picture of your family down in front of the Eiffel Tower, you can do that. Or maybe you don't want to go to France at all. I'm saying you can just do everything with this lens. You can do video, you can do photo. It is just, you never have to take this off your camera. Now, there will be some drawbacks to that, and we will talk about them. But first, let's go with the build quality. They are using the Sigma Contemporary build, which I like a lot. I think it looks really attractive. It has a nice rubber ring for extending the barrel, and it's actually just about the right amount for me because it's not too tight or too loose, no jokes, everybody, because you don't want it to creep down as you're carrying it around. So you do want it to have a certain level of tightness, but you don't want it to be so tight that it's hard to move, because you do have to move it a long way if you want to go all the way to 300. But the actual throw is not that far. You just see that? That's it. Right here, just that amount of movement, and I think that's great instead of having to crank the lens over and over. The rest of the lens is made of a hard plastic and glass, of course with a little bit of metal. It has a smooth turning focus ring down at the base of the lens. And when you're not taking photos, there is a locking switch, so you definitely won't get any barrel creep if you don't want it with that switch engaged. And in terms of accoutrements, that is it. There are no buttons and switches, no aperture ring that can be clicked or declicked. I would love an aperture ring, Sigma, if you're listening, but I get it. You're trying to keep costs down, pass it on to the consumer. I do appreciate that. Comes with a nice solid petal lens hood, which can help protect your fancy lens and also help protect you from some of those sun flares. The lens does have a variable aperture of f3.5 to f6.7. So at 16 millimeters, you get a 3.5, which you certainly can use in a studio. It would be very similar to a Sony kit lens that starts at f3.5, 16 millimeters. And then when you go all the way out to 300, you are at f6.7. So if you're out at 300, 6.7, even on an APS-C camera, will give you plenty of background separation. However, for the most part, you're not going to get a ton of background separation. If you want a really shallow depth of field, this is not the lens for you in many situations. If this lens had a constant aperture of, say, f2.8, like the 18-50, it would have to be a larger lens and certainly much more expensive. In fact, let me show you right here. This is me at 300 millimeters. millimeters. And this is me standing in the same spot at 16 millimeters. Look at the distance you can cover with this lens. One of the strongest points for this lens has to be autofocus. When you're using something like an A6700, it feels like you're using a native Sony lens when it comes to autofocus. It just latches onto the eye of a human or an animal or a bird. I mean, I guess they're all animals, but still, they have them separated in the menu for good reason. It latches onto the eye of whatever you are pointing the lens at. It can also track subjects extremely well. Snappy autofocus that is dead silent, completely reliable. Sigma uses those new motors, and they are fantastic. Another big highlight of this lens is focus breathing, or lack thereof. Whether you are at 16 millimeters or 300 millimeters, you will see virtually no focus breathing, and that is such a welcome thing for video shooters. Makes this lens much more versatile. When it comes to sharpness, this is a surprisingly sharp lens, especially in the center. It does fall off towards the corners, but the center of the frame is always acceptably sharp or even very sharp depending on what focal length you are at. When you are at 16 millimeters, it is a very sharp lens in the center, and it stays sharp all the way out to 300. Let's take a look at this chart right here. Zoomed in at 200%. Here we have 16, which is nice and sharp. 50 sharp as well. This is at 100 millimeters. This is 180. Now it looks a little less sharp than at the very beginning, and 300 I think is the softest, but still more than acceptably sharp. This is again at 200%. With distortion, of course, you're going to get a mixed bag with this type of zoom range. You're going to get a bit of barrel distortion at the wide end and a bit of pincushion distortion at the telephoto end, but it's actually pretty minimal considering how much of a zoom range this is and how small the lens is. So I was impressed with the amount of distortion, and of course Sigma will have Lightroom profiles to help you along with that distortion. Speaking of Lightroom profiles, there is a bit of vignetting when you are at the lower f-stops, but not really very much. And once again, with one click of a button, you will be able to get rid of that vignetting. The Sunstars are quite nice on this 16 to 300, which is great because you're going to use a lens like this for traveling, and often the old sun is creeping in to your travel photo, so it's nice to get those Sunstars at f22. It starts at about f16, I would say, but f22 you get some nice strong points on your Sunstars. And the coatings on this lens, because this is a Sigma lens and they always use great coatings on their contemporary lenses, so you get some nice flare resistance and ghosting resistance, and it will have lots of contrast even though you have a backlit situation. I am a big fan of the coatings that Sigma uses. It is one of the strong points for the company across all of their lenses. With Bokeh, while you don't buy this lens to try to get a ton of shallow depth of field, when you do get it, it is quite nice. Nice fall off from things that are in focus to out of focus, not too busy back there. And when it comes to bokeh balls, it does a pretty good job there as well. You can definitely see the blades of the iris, so they're not perfectly round, and there is a little bit of mess going on the inside, but nothing to complain about. They still look pretty good. Doesn't have any gross green fringing around the outside of the orbs that you see sometimes with lower priced zoom lenses. This one has nice high quality bokeh balls. A secret weapon of this lens is the close focusing distance. I was amazed at how close you can get to your subject. You can literally touch your subject with the lens. Now, that is without the lens hood. You can take the lens hood off and still touch the barrel of the lens to the subject that you are photographing. You can get some very interesting photos. So Sigma has done a great job with some of these contemporary lenses by getting that really, really close autofocus, just like with the 18 to 50. Now, it is quite an engineering feat to go from 16 to 300, have these glass elements and all these moving parts going at once. So I did expect to see some chromatic aberration, and I did see some. It wasn't too bad, certainly acceptable. The lateral chromatic aberration is actually really good. It's very hard to find any lateral chromatic aberration, even when you are pixel peeping in challenging circumstances. However, you will find some LOCA present. The longitudinal chromatic aberration, that's the aberration, the color fringing you see on the areas that are out of focus in the foreground and background, and that is present on some of the photos if you are really zooming in to 200 or 300%. 10%, but for the most part, in my day-to-day shooting, I really didn't see any LOCA to speak of, so I am very happy with the aberration control overall. The price of the lens is $699 USD, and I think that is a really good value for what you get. $16 to $300 for $699, I can deal with that. This lens for me was such a joy to take around because I know I could just put one lens on my camera and I am good for the whole day. My wife wanted to go to the park with the kids. You know, she likes going outside and breathing fresh air. And I just took this thing, taking pictures of ducks, taking pictures of herons. At one point, a turtle showed up for some reason, took some pictures of him. All the snappy snaps you want of your wife, your kids, the turtles just zooming in and out. It just great. Relatively easy to get all of the photos that I wanted for the day without interrupting my little family walk, where I did get a bit winded. I am not going to lie to you, but I can see the appeal of a lens like this for so many people. Let me know down below, are you one of those people? Do you want a one and done lens? And if you do, is this the one for you? Let me know down below. We'll have a nice little discussion about it. Thanks for watching this. We'll talk to you again soon. Okay, bye-bye.